What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Cachapolia sitting on the couch, making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today's going to be kind of a different video for me. Not going to really be talking about specifics of investing in fractional real estate. Somebody mentioned in one of my recent videos, I think just yesterday's or maybe even this morning, it feels like longer ago than that because I've been thinking about it quite a bit. That I just have had a lot of I don't know, gloom and doom or something like that lately about a lot of this stuff. And I think that's true. And I wanted to sort of address why that's been the direction that I've gone, but also just reinforce that I am very optimistic about this industry as a whole. I think that fractional real estate investing, it's going to, like, I just, I very rarely do anything in my business or in my investing where I'm trying to predict the future, right? I'm almost never doing that. I'm always, we talk about this a lot, right? I'm just trying to look at what we have now and, and make investments that are smart regardless of what happens in the future, right? So I'm very averse to trying to say, I think this is going to happen or that's going to happen, and then I'm going to bet on that. But I have been making a big bet of my time talking about fractional real estate investing, trying to create a community, learning about it myself, starting to dabble, put a little bit of money to work. The only reason I'm doing that is because I really believe that this industry will take off. I think that there is so much room for growth. I've worked with real estate investors for the last 20 years. I've been one myself, and I just think that it's always such a big jump going from zero to one property, right? Buying that first property is such a big jump. It keeps a lot of people out of investing at all. And I think the ability to invest in real estate on a fractional level um, it's just it's necessary, right? Like in order to get more people to actually have a stake in investment properties, especially with properties just getting more and more expensive and interest rates are high right now, or not high, with a very long term perspective. But if you've only been in the industry for the last 10 or 15 years, they seem extremely high, right? Um, Coincidentally, they're right around the rate that they were when I bought my very first investment property. But properties are also more expensive. So anyway, I think that all that aside, there is a need for in the industry for some fractional step, some way to get into real estate investing without having to take your whole life savings and put it down, and YOLO it on a single property. And so I just really see the benefit to investors. From the flip side of it, I think there's a lot of money to be made, especially if it's done well. I mean, there's obviously this huge demand and people throwing their money at different platforms. I've got Landa up. I think probably everybody who's watched this knows that that's a basically a failed platform at this point in time. I think that maybe some of the people that work there might disagree, but overall, I don't know anybody. I don't even think you can put new money on. I don't think you have the ability to invest at the moment. Um, but that's why I just left this one up for the beginning. But I'm actually going to go through. I want to talk a little bit about the places where I see the most potential and where I have some optimism. But also too, like the main reason I wanted to sort of explain myself why I have been really focused on a lot of the downside, and it's a couple of reasons. One, I started to get worried that I was attracting people to the platform. I know people use my referral codes. They come on here, not a ton, but I think probably for every one of those that do, there's probably other people that sign up for some of these platforms and don't. And so it worries me that some of these people, I'm their first introduction to the platform, whatever platform it is, and but they're not watching the rest, right? They're not hearing me say, these are the things to look out for. These are and so they jump in and lose money. And I know at least one person that's actually come out and told me that. But I'm sure that there are others, right? And so I want to make sure whenever I'm talking about any of these platforms that it's really clear to everybody involved what my position is as far as how much actual risk I think there is in the platform itself. Um, which reminds me, please like and subscribe. In the description to this video, I have links to all the places where I'm currently invested in fractional real estate online. Like I just said, do your own due diligence on all of those platforms and any of the properties you see, right? I make mistakes all the time. I try to correct them when I find out about them, but I don't want you to just go and see that I'm invested in something and then you just buy it, and or vice versa, right? I say I'm not going to buy this one, and you take that to be your decision. I don't think that's the right answer. Um, Also, the one of the main goals of my channel is to build a community of other fractional real estate investors, so we can all talk and share ideas and whatnot. And so there's in the description to this video, there's a link to that Discord. If you haven't signed up for that, feel free to do that. Jump in there. We talk about all different platforms. Um, but so, I want to make sure as I am talking about different platforms that I'm not giving people a false sense of hope. I want you to come into this with your eyes wide open as much as possible. But I am going to try to give you a few things that I think that make me really optimistic in some of the platforms. So one, and you guys hear me talk about this all the time, I am extremely optimistic about Mogul. I think that their team really understands real estate investing. They seem to know, they seem to understand, like, okay, if we're going to use debt, why are we using debt? They're thinking about, is it accretive to our business plan? It's something that they talk about. If you go on their webinars, you'll really see that it's tough to ask them questions that they don't really haven't really thought through. And so, they're still pretty new, but so just like any other platform, you want to dig in yourself, figure out how you feel about it, read all the terms and conditions, read through, all the documents that, they're the entity documents and just everything, right? I mean, you want to just really understand. I'm not putting a huge amount of my net worth in here yet, and that's true with all these platforms, right? I mean, I think I'm on average, I'm putting, some of these I just have $500 in. The biggest one I've got a 5,000, right? So I'm not putting a ton of money in here at all right now. I started investing in here in December, but so far so good, right? I've been really happy with the rate of return that I'm getting, with just the responsiveness of their team, the types of, the deals that they're picking out. Overall, I think, a platform like Mogul is what's going to win. And so that's one of the things I want to talk about. If you think about, we're just in a really early stage for fractional real estate investing. Although there's been a couple of attempts to do this online. We were, 10 years ago, it was really more like, oh, crowdfunding real estate. And it was sort of a little bit different angle. It was more about, the people raising the equity and less about like the actual just investment itself. Um, but anyway, I think we're still just really early, right? And it's like some of the, just like any industry that's growing, 90%, maybe 95%, maybe more of these companies that are popping up now are not going to exist in 20 years, right? Most of these companies are going to fail. Um, we've already seen some of it. We're going to see iterations of some of the companies. They're going to change their business model. They're going to do things a little bit differently. They might run into regulatory problems. But Mogul is one that I'm pretty optimistic about. I think that they are very smart about the way they're approaching things. They truly seem to understand real estate, and they care that the people on the platform are making an investment that's profitable, right? And I think that's really important, and I think that that's lacking in some of the sites. Um, Again, though, my opinion on them could change. I mean, I don't invest in every single one of their deals. I have been critical of a couple of things that they've done over the past several months. But on average, I've invested in a lot of the recent deals. I haven't bought a piece of this one yet, but I plan to. But like, if you look at the little green invested buttons, I buy into quite a few of their deals, right? Um, Not every single one. You can see I skipped some. This was where I started before, all these other ones are before that. So on average, about two out of every three, I'll pick up a little bit of. Some more, some less. It just depends. So, I talk about them all the time. I think that they're a great way to, if you're going to invest on another platform, but you don't really understand how to figure out what's a good deal and what's not. I think looking at the deals that are on Mogul, if there's some reason you don't want to buy them, understanding what they're doing, how they're picking markets, how they're picking deals, could be really helpful. Solves a lot is another one I'm really optimistic about. They just revamped their website. I'm hoping they're not done because their little floating things go over my dashboard. You can see I don't have a ton of money in here whatsoever. Oh, and it's not really linked right at all because it's not showing any of this stuff. So yeah, like I said, hopefully this is still being worked on. I know this is the first, yesterday is the first time I actually saw their new site, but it's showing me, the ones that I own. It's just for whatever reason not showing the crypto that's actually in my wallet on here. Hopefully I didn't lose that somehow. But this is another founder that I think really understands real estate, his business. He's been a wholesaler, which is a business that I'm often critical of. If you don't know what wholesaling is, you're basically, you go and tie up a property at one price, then you go find a buyer. You either sell them your contract or you double close one day. It's an industry that's really full of people doing stuff. Mostly it's an imbalance of information that creates the profit for the wholesaler. But there are some people that do it in a really um, in an upright manner, actually disclose things or trying to help people and whatnot. And Matt strikes me, Matt's one of the co-founders of this. He strikes me as really being one of those types of people. I don't know that for sure. I haven't worked with him. But his business model here is, something that's really aimed at helping people that would have been his customers and that would have been the people he would have bought from in the past. And so I think that he really understands the need, and I think that I think there's just a huge need for cash in this manner. And so far, I've only got, I think, I don't know, three or four that I've sold out of, but they've all been profitable. I think the model works. They're just really early, and they've got some kinks out, but it is one I'm pretty optimistic about. Arrived, I've never really liked the deals that they put out, but I really enjoyed the way they handled their secondary market. There weren't too many great deals, but it is just being rolled out. There were some that they're at least better deals than what you can get in their IPOs, right? Some of the secondary markets, you did see some discounts. Um, I think that the more their secondary market develops, the more opportunity there's going to be there. I think they were really smart on how they did their secondary market. The more I think about it, the more I wonder, like, do you really need a market like Lofty's that is open all day, every day? I can trade whenever I want to. Um, it should be a long-term investment. I don't know. I don't know the answer, right? Because I do enjoy, getting an alert at 2 in the morning, jumping out of bed and going and buying some tokens because I'm getting a great deal. Like, that's an actual thing that I do to make $4 on a token, which is, it's silly, but it is. I kind of like it. So I don't know, but I think that because it's such a thin market, it makes a lot of sense to create this time constraint. So all the people show up at the marketplace around the same time, and there's some urgency, and I don't know. I like what they did. We'll see over the next several quarters how it actually plays out. Um, but I think that was an intelligent approach to this, and maybe something that'll be copied by some of the other platforms that are talking about having a secondary market. All the platforms say they'll eventually have it. Not all of them, but most of them do. But very few of them actually have one, or have one that's like robust enough to to have a number of purchases and sales regularly. I mean, I think, at least from my perspective, Lofty has the largest secondary market right now, but it is still a extremely thin market where you don't have true liquidity, because as soon as you try to sell more than 10 tokens in something, you end up starting to lose huge amounts of money through slippage. But so anyway, that's one that's got me pretty optimistic. Now this is going to kind of get me, it's a weird way to say that I'm optimistic, but I really like that some of these platforms that I think are maybe not the greatest are failing, right? I think that um, it's very healthy for the ecosystem for the bad actors in a system to just fail, to get wiped out, I think that's when capitalism is working properly, bad companies don't attract capital, right? And so I think that's actually a good thing that we see some of that happening. Collab, even though I really like their business model, because I think their execution is pretty poor in the way they're presenting stuff. Again, they're just not selling out much at all, and I think that's a good thing, right? I think it's not healthy when you see um, there has just been so much demand for fractional real estate, and people have just been willing to jump into deals without getting, what I think is a reasonable a level of transparency and due diligence for a property, right? And so it actually it makes me more optimistic for the industry as a whole that some of these companies aren't just able to, sell out all their investments quickly. Ground floor, I've kind of flip flop on quite a bit, right? They were my favorite about it when I first started, which was almost a year ago now. They were early favorite. They did some stuff that I didn't really like. I know if you look at their company financials, the company's still losing money, but they're like losing money because they're in growth mode. Um, the people in our Discord have had kind of mixed results. I've been really lucky. I think I haven't had any defaulted loans. I was talking to someone today in the Discord that's had like 30% default rate. Um, it's crazy that we have such a different experience, but he's been in there much longer than me. But I do think seeing people that really pulled back after that last move they did, where they did this weird payoff and they're trying to, also the move that they really seem to just be pushing their flywheel portfolio. Like, I'm glad to see people in this industry are voting with their dollars right now, right? They're saying, hey, I really don't like what's going on, and I'm going to move it and I'm going to move it somewhere else. And so, one of the things that makes me optimistic here is that we do have options, right? And I think we're starting to create a bit of collective industry understanding of things, right? So there's a lot of us now that have invested in ground floor and had money on Landa and have money in Arrive and have money on Lofty and are invested in Mogul and maybe concrete or some of the, roots or some of the ones that are not really fractional real estate but are pretending to be. Um, and so I think that over time, there sort of becomes this collective memory and this collective experience where, uh, as new companies pop up, they won't be able to just get the dollars right away because more and more people will be understanding, how to scrutinize those deals. And that kind of brings me to Lofty, right? They're the ones that I have, the most videos about where I'm negative about them. I also am on their site every single day. I still have a decent amount of money on there, more than any of the other fractional sites at the moment. Still not like a huge portion of my net worth to where like if it all disappeared, like I'm not willing to risk a huge chunk of it on any of these yet, right? Um, the reason I put more on there is because there's a lot of different ways to invest in deals and experiment on there. Um, so, one of the reasons I'm so negative about them, one is because I do talk about them a lot, and I know that I've introduced a lot of people to this platform, and I want to make sure that they understand the risks involved. But the other thing is, I think their model is fantastic, right? I think that the idea of not their execution, I don't think they execute it well. And when I say this, when I criticize them, I'm thinking about their business from a real estate perspective, the types of deals they put out, and from a business perspective, right? The way they handle us as customers, the way they, their decision making, their speed of handling things. I'm not making any judgment whatsoever about their technology side. Their smart contracts might be amazing, their liquidity pools, like they might have really figured something out. I don't know anything about that, right? I just know what my user experience is, and I understand the deals that they bring to the platform, are they good or not, right? And I know and I guess one of the reasons that I'm so critical of them is because they're not providing, they're like, oh, we're a marketplace, but they're really trying to, I think they use that to way too far of an extent, right? They just want to be like, you can just list anything at all on here. We're not going to control you at all. It can just be whatever you feel like. I don't think that's how any successful marketplace actually operates. Um, I think if you really dig into, Nasdaq, for example, it's certainly not, right? I mean, if you don't have three market makers, you're not going to get on there. And then what are those market makers doing? Significant due diligence into your platform, right? So like and, even to put stuff on eBay, sure, I can put whatever I want, but they're gonna stop me from selling certain things. There's gonna be repercussions if I'm defrauding people and all this stuff, right? So, or selling bad products or whatever it is. So I think that they take that too far. And so because of that, it's really on us as a community to just like identify when the properties are terrible and, share that information amongst ourselves, right? And the only way that Lofty, I believe, will fix it. I don't think they want to change that, right? I think that, or they think they can't. I'm not sure. They haven't given any indication that they actually want to bring good deals to the platform. Um, and so because of that, I think what they're saying is, well, we just want to be agnostic, right? We don't want to make judgments about if it's a good deal or not. Um, and because of that, it's really on us as a community more than any of the other platforms to just not buy the deals that are not great deals. And so, early on, I felt a little bit weird, and I just trashing every single one that came up, and that was sort of what I'm doing now. But I think that as I've really understood like where we are in this platform and as a community, I think it's necessary, right? I think like there are deals that don't deserve a single dollar from lofty investors, right? Like and I think that over time, um, if we do a good job with this as a community, Lofty will stop bringing those type, they'll somehow figure out some way that they can, affect a little bit what comes and what doesn't to the platform, because they're basically doing the work, listing a property, and then it doesn't sell out. Like that's what I'm really hoping happens, right? I think that so I talk about this average token price a lot, right? On average, every property that's listed, the average property that's listed on the platform has lost an incredible amount of value. Over 35% at this point. Is that right? Around or over 34%, around 34. What we got there? 17. Yeah, 34%. I should never try to do mental math when I'm doing these videos. I don't know. I'm actually good at doing math in my head, but whenever I do it here, always second guess myself. But anyway, I think around 34%. We'll go with that. Um, and it's a huge loss, right? To be the average loss for a property that's launched on the platform. And so I would like to see that not continue. One thing I wanted to point out on here, because I do point to this Lofty Assist um, platform a lot, is there's something going on here that seems wrong. The creator of Lofty Assist is aware of this. He thinks that it's actually the data that's coming out of Lofty that's not providing this right. So I don't think that there were this few sales these last 2 days. So I just wanted to point that out. It seems like the average token price might be working still, but anyway, it's been hovering right around this price, and so it is. I think it's gotten to be really clear that it's on us as a community to police this site, right? To like make sure that the properties that we shouldn't see on here just don't get any money. And the ones that are already on here that people are invested in, I think there's a bunch of us that are working hard towards buying up some real cheap tokens, selling those properties in real life, making a little money on the way, but really clearing off the platform of the stuff that's going to disappoint new users. Because one of the things that I believe is that, because this is such a new industry, the experience that investors have over the next few years is really going to have a large impact on how quickly the industry takes off. And so if all these people are coming on here, buying a $50 token, realizing they can't sell it, realizing, okay, I'm not getting the yield that I thought I was going to at first, getting either stuck with it or losing money, a significant amount of money over a short period of time, if that just keeps happening, uh, you know, on one of the bigger platforms, because their platform is, you know, more popular than a lot of these, uh, has more properties for sale anyway. Well, that's going to be really problematic for the industry, right? And so that's why I am really critical about the properties. But okay, I told you I'm going to focus on optimism right now. There's a couple of things. One, this property that just came out has only had $3,600 worth of trading volume. I'm actually really happy about that. Now, I want to see Chris succeed. It's not that I want his property not to sell out, but at the moment, we really don't have what I think is significant information about the tenant, about the business itself, about the, you know, about our, to make the type of investment at the low yields that we're being asked to invest in it, right? And so I was really happy to see that as a community, Lofty investors on average, have just not been attracted to this deal. I think 6 months ago, this deal would have sold out so quickly because, you know, Chris is a successful commercial real estate guy. That you know, so, people have been drawn to like the successful investors. They sort of get this halo effect. You know, they're when the Brownfield property launched, and I was somewhat critical of that property to a few people, several people, and some people that I think are very, you know, smart in general investors on the platform, said things to me like, "Oh, well, you know, you're criticizing him, but he's got millions of dollars worth of real estate." You know, like like that was their defense of him, right? And regardless of how successful somebody is, we still have to look at each deal in a vacuum. Does this deal make sense? And I just really don't think that we've gotten great. You know, we've gotten answers to a lot of the questions, and I've done some updates. I think I did like, I know I did one long video, and then I did a couple of updates. And I know Chris has been really active in the Discord. Um, just to me, still, it does not feel like we have, you know, significant answers as far as like understanding the business of the tenant. Why are they going to make enough money to pay us, and all these things, right? And so I was really glad to see that this didn't just, you know, sell out $1 million overnight or something, or even 100,000. Or you know, at the same time, Alec, or you might know him as Walik, you know, on the Discord, he launched this a day later, I think, or no, a couple of days later. He's already sold $30,000. This is just a single family home. Now I did a video on this one too. I have concerns about this property. I'm not telling you, oh, this is one that is great and you should buy it. But the difference is, and everybody who I've talked to that's bought into this, you know, they've said, yeah, I understand these things are a risk, and you know, the biggest one for me is the leverage. Um, but you know, I mentioned a whole bunch of things in that video that you might want to think about. Um, but the difference is, Alec is on the platform regularly. He's already had other deals on here, but and he's managing several of the other properties. But he's really shown himself to be somebody who is, you know, basically willing to give up some of his upside, some of his money, really a good portion of his time in his life to make sure that deals that he's involved with turn out okay, right? Like it is, you know, one of the ones that he manages that I own a piece of. Yeah, I think he paid out of pocket to replace the tenant stove or something like that. You know, more than anything, I think just to maintain the yield of the property, right? Like he's just really trying to do things. Now, I don't think he should continue to do stuff like that. You can only do so much of that. But he's really just shown his character and his willingness to, you know, do what it takes to make deals work. Um, I still think you need to go into any deal, you know, with your eyes wide open about like, does that deal itself make sense? But just seeing the difference in sales between these two, I really believe 6 months ago, because this is a commercial property, because it's niche, because it's, you know, a very successful commercial real estate guy, you know, somebody who owns a lot of property. I think all of those things would have been all people thought about, and they would have been tripping over themselves to invest in this property. You could say, well, no, what's happening is just yield chasing too, because this one has a much lower yield. I just really don't believe that's what's going on. I mean, I think, you know, if you can see some other ones where that did have kind of a low yield that people still jumped into. Um, but regardless, I mean, this isn't really just about these two deals. In general, it's about, I think that our community is getting smarter, right? I think that collectively people are understanding the types of things that we have to look at, the types of things we should worry about. We're demanding more answers from people bringing properties to the platform. I think all that's great. The fact that I'm on Lofty Assist, right, a product made by one of the investors on the platform, even if Lofty doesn't make it, right, and there is a very real chance that they won't. Obviously, token prices continually going down. A lot of angry people on the site. But even if they go under, it won't be a loss for, I mean, obviously, a lot of us might lose money, but the collective knowledge from everybody involved. So like, you've got Earl who's managing tons of properties, you've got Alec, like they will just take those skills and probably take some of those investors with them and go on to whatever the next platform is that's doing the same thing and doing it better. Limas, who's built this Lofty Assist product, he can roll out a similar product for a bunch of other sites. I know he's worked on, or he's working on one now. He's probably got a couple in the works, for all I know. But it is, um, this is the sort of thing where we just have to kind of build the ecosystem, right? And whether or not any of these companies exist in 10 years doesn't really matter as long as there's a community of people who've learned from the mistakes of some of the platforms, who've learned from the mistakes of the early investors and are, moving forward and really like pressing the platforms to give us more transparency, um, create a structure that's going to allow us to have, to attract good deals to the platform. And then also too, I mean, we had basically this huge scandal where, either there was an attempt to defraud about 40 of the DAOs, maybe, or just overreaching from management, or just really, mass ineptitude, like whatever the actual situation was. Several of the DAOs were put in jeopardy, right? They were put in a situation where they the money was at risk, uh, or at least appeared to be so, because we had zero transparency into what was going on. Um, the fact that Lofty did very little about it, although they did hire an attorney and do something. It seems like they sent a letter. I mean, that's the extent of what I know they actually did. They're very quiet about it, but the community, tons of people jumped in, uh, you know, did the things necessary to take over properties. I mean, it's still not it's settled, and I mean, we're 5 or 6 months into this at this point. Um, and we probably will be dealing with it for, who knows, maybe years to come, right? Maybe some of them. I mean, it seems like we're picking up the pace of getting through them now. But the fact that the community was able to navigate those issues, um, you know, a lot, multiple people stepped up. Yes, only really three took over DAOs, but you saw a bunch of people doing things behind the scenes, putting together votes, helping to do due diligence on stuff, digging up information. You're just seeing more and more of that in a way that I really like to see, and I think that it's changed a little bit of the mindset of a lot of people. So, 6 or 8 months ago, when I was doing videos where I'd go in and make comments that were negative about a co-owner or negative about a property, I got a ton of hate from people. A lot of people would message me and be like, oh, or sometimes even just post it in the Discord, be like, why don't you bring your own properties to the platform if you're so great at this? And I was just trying to do due diligence as an investor, try to figure out what's going on. Is this right? What's happening here? And so it's gone from, I actually had a decent number of people really just argue with me, or not, attack is a strong word, but like were very aggressive about just towards me, just because I was asking questions. And I think the change in attitude, to where just so many people now are really digging into deals, really asking questions. I think it's fantastic, right? I think hopefully we keep that, because as an investor, that's like the number one skill you need to have is to identify risk and avoid it, right? Um, Especially in an investment like real estate where, we're not going to get any of these 10x returns. This isn't like, okay, you can lose money on a bunch of stocks, but you get the one that really goes to the moon and so you're still fine, right? Real estate is sort of, okay returns on a whole bunch of properties. And as long as we avoid losing it all on any individual property, then we'll do well over time. I mean, that's the way I've always approached it, and I think most, successful in real estate investors, that's sort of their model. It is really just risk avoidance at all costs and figuring out how to do that. And so I don't know. I've been really pleased with seeing that change in attitude. Sometimes it does seem like fear mongering or doom and gloom. So we're getting back to that, right? Like I think that it it seems pessimistic, but it's really not. I think that that's not like where it's coming from. I think that the more we can, I think you just have to really scrutinize deals. And like I've mentioned this several times, I think my day job, I run a team where we help investors find investment properties in San Antonio. We'll look for deals all day, every day. There's at any given time, there's 10,000 plus properties listed for sale here in town. And if we find 4 or 5 deals a month, I'm happy with that as a team. Like, that's a good number to come up with out of going through 10,000 plus, that are listed at any point in time. Um, it shouldn't, it's not easy to find real estate investments, right? And so, like, that brings me back, like Mogul, what they're doing, they're bringing a real skill to the table, finding these deals. Um, I think the business model is I think finding the deals, I think Matt probably has that skill here, but it's also a different business model where I think there's just so much demand. One of the reasons that I think Arrive doesn't really work for me and for a lot of people, even though they are one of the biggest platforms, um, is that they kind of just buy average deals. They don't appear to be great deals, just on the surface, like what they say you're going to make. They just don't look great. But so I think that's why I'm looking forward to their secondary markets and getting at a discount, because then all of a sudden it starts to look good, right? Um, where over here there's nobody doing that work, and so it falls on the community to do it. But the only tools that we have to do it are to just not buy the ones as they come up, and to work together to get the bad deals off the platform, right? And I think there's plenty of both happening. I mean, I think just this week, I think maybe two more deals that I'm involved with are going to be put up for sale, or maybe this week or next week. And so, um, I think probably, if honestly, if it were up to me, it's probably three-quarters of the deals on this platform we would just list them and sell them. I mean, that's how many I think are just like really just trash deals. They're not good. The home might be perfectly fine. The location might be okay too, but it's not a property that was ever going to work as an investment property at fair market value, right? Because the highest and best use is for an owner occupant. That's who should be buying that property, not an investor. That's the case with the vast majority of the properties in the world. And so, in order to get, so if I wanted to have a deal a week come out like Moguls, right? They're putting out about a deal a week. And on average, I really like these deals. But they're sifting through probably thousands of deals to get these, right? I mean, I literally think that's, and to say that maybe the first level of filtering is taking out a lot of them, but I'm sure they're looking at tons and tons of deals. I mean, they have a team that this is what they do all day, every day, is find these deals, right? There's not somebody here. So to get an equal level of deal, sorry about that, froze right at the important moment, right? Just trying to make the comparison here. If you're trying to get the same level of deal that you're getting on Mogul, where they're doing all this filtering, on a platform like Lofty, where they're doing zero filtering, you'd have to expect that every week they'd onboard 1,000 properties or more, and then from that we can find the one good deal out of out of 1,000, right? I mean, or out of 2,500. It's so hard to find good investment properties out in the real world, and it's no different on these platforms, right? Either the platform does that work in the filtering, or if they're going to say no, we're not going to do that, we can't do it at all, which seems to be Lofty's position. Well, then, in order to find a good deal every week, we'd expect them. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be over 1,000 deals, right? Because I mean, I'm looking at literally that many deals, right? Like if you just look at all the new listings in my marketplace every week, um, it's so you don't just find it's not just every single property out there is a good one, and it's really not 1 out of 10. I mean, it is. I use my filters, and that probably takes out um, narrows us down to 500 properties every week that I'm really starting to scrutinize and sort through. And then beyond that, I use some geographic filters that are, or just look at, and then look at pictures for a bunch of them. So I'm not actually going and visiting all those properties, but I'm having to do, that work of filtering out those. And so if they're not going to act as a filter whatsoever, it's not surprising at all. Honestly, it's surprising that there are as many good deals on here as there are, right? I mean, I think, um, I don't know, last time I looked on here, let's see, is this working or I think the only thing affected is that sales volume, right? But so, okay, there are 23 that are priced between 50 and, over $50 or more, right? 23 out of 156. It's like 1/6, a little bit less than 1/6. That's actually a fantastic hit rate. Now, uh, I think some of that is that some of those properties are just people are paying too much for them. They're the best ones available on the platform. Some people aren't identifying all the risk appropriately. So, I think over time, some of the deals that are here are going to fall below. And I think there's some chance that some of them over here. I mean, I don't know. I think some of them that are between the 40 and 50 could end up surpassing the 50 sometime in the reasonably near future. So it is actually surprising that the number of deals on here. But I think that part of that comes from people like Alec and Earl that had some success and were, brought a property that made sense, or REO. I don't talk about him much. He's super quiet in the Discord. He just jumps. He's very, all business. Only has a couple of properties, but I feel like he's very professional the way he handles things. Um, these some of these people are their properties. They brought one, they did well. People liked it because it was way better than what they're used to seeing, and then that attract more. So those few people have brought multiple deals. Um, and maybe over time they can attract, just from sort of the people that survive over time, that because if you bring a bad deal and people don't buy it, but the problem is people were buying them, right? So I don't know. I'm getting really off topic here, I think. Anyway, my whole point is about what I am happy to see is that people are scrutinizing these more. Um, a little bit of a worry that I have is, okay, if people don't buy, they're it's not like Lofty is launching very many properties, right? And so if people aren't buying, if 99 out of 100 we're passing on average, because they're not doing any sort of screening or sorting, uh then I mean, I think the platform would die really quickly, right? I mean, they'd be doing a lot of this work, and then there'd be they'd have very little to show for it, right? So I think that's the real risk, right? And then also too, as we're moving platforms into real world sales, that's taking trading volume on the non-performing properties away. And so I don't want to see them fail. I really would like to see them figure out how to actually attract good deals on average. I mean, obviously they don't have to be mogul, right? They don't have to have a full team that's out there um, all day, every day, digging up deals, negotiating, working hard. because they are relying on, the community to bring in deals and to do things. But I think there's a lot that they could do, around the structure. Uh-oh, are we freezing again? What is happening? Around the way they structure things, around the due diligence required and all that stuff that could make it so, um, the average deal that came on was significantly better, right? And then, okay, if instead of, if you got to a place where most of the deals that came onto the platform were good and we didn't have to be, you didn't have to be so picky, right? Like if you scrutinize them, it wasn't, I mean, like I can't think of one that came on the platform honestly, this year. I don't think there was one that came on the platform this year at $50 that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna buy that one. I did buy a piece of the Denver fourplex. Yeah, this Alcott, but I actually think I got this when it was slightly discounted. I might not have. I might have paid $50 for this one, but I didn't buy it when it first came out. It wasn't until Earl took over management of it and is I think maybe changed one of the units to rent by the room. I'm not positive. Um, Maybe they were going to and they didn't. But anyway, almost every single deal that came up this year, I passed on at the IPO price. And I think, over time, as the community really starts to understand real estate more and really starts to see the risk in this model, I think we're just going to see that, right? I think that more and more people are not going to be buying these bad deals, and bad being my subjective opinion, right? But I think more and more people, they're going to want to, you're always just having to compare. Okay, if I have to compare every deal I see on here to the average deal I see on Mogul, right? Because my dollars could go to either platform. And so, I now obviously there's some secondary liquidity here. It's not on Mogul yet. That's not super important to me, right? It is how I'm making my money on Lofty right now, but only because they're not bringing high quality deals, right? If they were bringing deals that made sense at $50, I wouldn't have to spend all the time trying to find these $25 tokens, right? Trying to get the discounts and make deals work and shift and change things. So, yeah, I didn't do a good job of staying positive, right? But it is like my negativity towards this has a positive intention, right? Like I really do want to see him win. I think until they understand the the situation as it is and realize just how bad the properties are that they've attracted to the platform, until they've like internalized that, they won't actually shift to a model that's going to actually, to work for investors. And that's the bottom line, right? Is like what works for us as a community. But even if they don't, even if they just move along struggling the way they are right now, one of the things that they've done better than I think really anybody is create a good community, right? Like the Discord is active. There's a bunch of people in there. There's people trying to make things better. And I think out of all the different groups, of like people that don't have their own platform right now, I think you're going to see lofty investors really affecting the outcome of fractional real estate moving forward, because there's a bunch of people that have created bonds, they're sharing ideas, they're now moving on to other platforms to some extent, they're investing in other places, that we're always talking about other options. It is why I set up a neutral Discord, right? That's not attached to any specific platform, so we can do that even more. But most of the people that talk to me on there, a lot of them are people that are on the Lofty Discord regularly. Lots of people aren't, right? We have some people that are just found my videos about Mogul or Collab or Ground Floor and then jumped in from there, or Solves Lot, any of them. But I think if you think about like really who's the most active community right now, it is the Lofty investors. Part of it is, it is like um, when you've just been through some stuff with some people, right? Like most of my good friends that I still have today are people that I was in the military with um, 20 years ago. I don't know most of them, but a lot of my closest friends are people that I was in the military with because, yeah, we went through just rough times together, and that creates a bond. And I kind of think that's the benefit a lot of us are getting going through this on here. I think there's been a lot of trust built between some of the investors. You see people working, doing deals together on the side. All of that stuff makes me optimistic for the future of this space, even if it's not on this particular platform, right? Um, I know there are people that are working on spinning up some similarly created, competitors. Whether or not those ever happen or not, for sure there will be more fractional real estate sites launched in the future. There are plenty of others that I didn't even mention today. I think that on average, the ones that are going to win are the ones that are going to make money for the investors on the platform, and aren't just like, oh, well, I'm going to leave it up to you to do that. Uh, and also too are able to, some of the ones like, the I think the biggest criticism I've heard about Mogul is there's people that are really worried about their approach to the regulatory regime that goes on right now, right? There's people that are concerned about the interests that you're buying. Now, I think these guys are smart guys. I know they probably paid a ton of money to their lawyers to help them put together this regime. But I know that there are people that are worried about it, right? And so any of the platforms I think could fail and we could see not work. But I think that I think over time, the ones that will be most successful are the ones that allow investors to make the most money, right? That help us make the most money, and also give us a good return on our time. I guess that's the other thing that becomes really problematic on Lofty is yes, you can make really good money if you're just very actively trading, very actively involved in pushing the direction of your properties. Um, but it's not, I don't know. It is funny how difficult it is for me to talk about them and not to just start to get negative. And I don't want to do that. That's not the point of today, right? I think a lot of good is coming out of the problems that we have here. And I think there's some chance that they turn it around too. I think there's some chance that the guys running Lofty just like it just clicks and they're like, you know what? Yes, our average deal is terrible. And it has to, we have to figure out a way. And I know they're worried about compliance, but there's definitely ways around it, right? Like there's definitely ways to comply and still, on average, put out better deals so that as a community, we're making money, not losing money, right? I think that's really it for today. I know this is a long video about nothing. I'm getting really good at that. So you're welcome if you just like to hear me ramble on a topic for a long time. Hopefully, this, though, gives you a little bit more insight into the way I'm thinking about this stuff. I really do believe like this is this is the business of the future, like as far as real estate goes. Like there's none of the guys in the institutional real estate space or just like the traditional real estate investment space, hardly anybody is looking at this stuff and talking about it. And I think that they're going to get blindsided by it. Like I really see this as being the future, and it's why I think it's important that all of us that are in this now work together, make it better. Vote with your dollars, right? Whenever it's don't just throw money at stuff because it's the only thing that's come up this week or this month, and you've got money on the platform. Move it off the platform if it's not working for you, right? I mean, that's one of the things that ends up being tempting when you're stuck in some of these ecosystems is like, okay, I've got cash here. It's a pain to move it out. Maybe it's going to take me a while, and oh well, maybe that's new deal is something I can just throw some in, make a little bit of my money back. Anyway, really done with that for now. Until next time, I'm just going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.